In this video, I would like to show you the process how you could generate a surface that, for example, on one side has an ergonomic element sculpted in, for example, to fit around your fingers. And maybe let's start this by using a shower gel bottle as a reference. Based on the previous lecture, you know that at this point, starting with a square is not really a good idea because I'm not getting a perfect circular shape. So I can delete that rectangle, and while I'm still in edit mode, I could maybe go to Shift A, add a circle, and then let's think about the amount of points. Well, 6 could be enough. So for example, those points here, that will later be used to sculpt the depressions for my fingers, while for example, those points will stabilize the sides, and then those points will define the opposite surface. But maybe I would like to have a little bit more control. So I press X and delete my circle, Shift A, and then maybe go to 8. 8 doesn't look too bad. So I know if I move this point or this point, then it will blend over to the midsection. But I would rather like to have the hand part only be visible in this area, and then more of this part, for example, all this area be flat. So I need some more points. So again, I delete it. And maybe, for example, let's go to 12. 12 actually looks like a good value. So I will continue using this one. Then in the side view, I can Shift D and, for example, move this one up. Let's say to there. Shift D, move it up. And this, for example, should be roughly my spout or the bottleneck of my shampoo bottle. And then I can Alt click on the lower ring, and then in top view, with pressing S, starting to scale it into the size I need. And maybe select those 4 points, scale, and then flatten the edges a little bit. And you see I have my subsurface modifier still turned on. So I have a nice oval shape that will feel good inside my hand. And on the top part where the bottleneck is, I have a perfect circular shape. And all these points or circles have exactly the same amount of vertices. So when I start skinning them, I will get very good surfaces. So at this point, maybe I can start selecting my different cross sections and then press spacebar and type in bridge and loop those together. And I alt click on a cross section and then Shift Alt click on the next cross section, press spacebar and press enter, hit the last command, and then it starts skinning the surface in between. You see this works very much like the skin tool in Alias. Then here I would like to have 2 more loop cuts inserted, and then I scale them apart evenly. So the top and bottom fillet is somewhat getting the same. I can scale this one down a little bit. Let's take a look from the side. Maybe this actually is too thick. So I press S and Z. So I scale along the Y and X axis. And this is maybe too linear. I would like this to be a little bit more round. So maybe I could add another cross section here, move it a little bit down, and then scale it so that maybe this arcs a little bit more. play with the position, the scale factor. Let's go into this view. Maybe here I scale along the x-axis. So I try to make this rounding being similar to this rounding. And then, for example, down here, similar to the water bottle, I'm going to add some extrusions. But now here I have to be a little bit careful because I'm working on an oval. You see if I simply scale that those lines are a little bit longer than, for example, those lines. So I have to manually adjust this a little bit. So here in this case I have to scale along S and Y to maybe compensate. And then there again, to make this a little bit better, I can make use of my numeric edge length, because then I can see that, for example, the vertical lines are 0.31 and the horizontal lines are 0.45. So I can press S and Y and then scale this one down till I reach 3.92. That, for example, is very much the same as the sides. And then I can press E again and, for example, move it in, scale, and then press E again and press S and 0. So they all snap to the same position point. Okay, so that so far is okay. Maybe still would like this to be a little bit higher. Actually, the whole bottle may be a little bit higher, so it feels better in my hand. Maybe like this. Okay, so how could we now create this S shape into the bottle? And to do this, all I need to do is actually add more cross sections. So I have, for example, 4 fingers. So now I would have 4 lines, but between each of those lines I need another cross section. So I need to have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 extra cross sections. So currently I have 4 cuts, so I have to go to 9 cuts. It's a little bit of number counting. And then at this point, now I could go ahead and, for example, select those vertices. And because I have, again, my view limit turned off, I can select through my model. And then either I can push it out, or, for example, push it in. And then there you see that we have achieved a very nice and extremely soft and organic sculpting of that hand part into the side of this bottle. Maybe those parts we would like to sculpt out a little bit, or if I would like to sharpen this, maybe I add a loop cut here and there. So as you see, there's basically a lot of freedom how you sculpt it, but it all is based on the resolution of your mesh inputs. So maybe if I select those and move those over, see that I can try to flatten, for example, this line a little bit, so that inside here this curve will be more linear than maybe arced. And this process is basically the same no matter what object you work on. Let's say you work on a handle for a bicycle, and at one part you would like to have those depressions put in, or a steering wheel for a car. It's always the same. You create a somewhat tubular system, then you create your cross sections, and then by push and pull, you sculpt in the depressions for your fingers.